Welcome to the Pay Love Forward podcast. My name is Dr. Matthew Leavenworth, founder and director of Pay Love Forward. This series focuses on telling stories of connection, creativity, and hope unfolding right here in Montana. At Pay Love Forward, our mission is to build compassionate communities for at-risk and underserved youth through mentorship. This podcast is one way we live out that mission. In this episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with Alyssa Leininger, a Billings native and leading voice in the public art movement. Alyssa is an accomplished artist who exhibits across the state and country, but she's best known for her public murals, works that have transformed spaces across Billings, from the iconic 6th Street underpass to the mental health center, bringing light and beauty to some of our most vulnerable populations. We start our conversation out with a discussion of the 6th Street underpass, where in 2020, Alyssa painted her very first mural. She was contracted through the city for less than $1,000 and spent over 1,000 hours pouring herself into her concrete canvas. The mural is a tapestry of sunrise and wildlife, highlighting native species like buffalo, elk, and eagles. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out, make sure you stop by, walk through, or give a honk of appreciation the next time you drive that way. It was an absolute honor to sit down with Alyssa. I hope her story inspires you as deeply as it has inspired me. The world needs better stories, and Pay Love Forward intends to tell them.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. It was during COVID, so I didn't have any art shows for that year. So I was looking for something to do to fill up my time rather than just be creating. I couldn't necessarily support myself if I didn't have any art shows to sell my work at. So I was online kind of looking at different jobs, possibly at like a coffee shop or something part-time so I could keep painting. But I stumbled across a call for artists to paint the 6th Street underpass. And I had never done a mural before at all, but I was really drawn to the 6th Street underpass my entire life. I drove through it coming to my grandmother's house and going to school every day. And so I passed through that like multiple times a day. And it's the very first place I ever saw a homeless person when I was little. And I still remember that. I asked my mom if we could walk through the underpass because it was so dark and dirty, and I was fascinated by it. My mom said no, but we ended up walking through it a million times. So
Yeah. She said no because it is foreboding, ugly, and
it's a
it
dirty,
feels dangerous.
Dark, dangerous space. It was that way, and I envisioned exactly what I ended up painting on it. And I submitted that concept. And it was the Southside Neighborhood Task Force that received a micro grant to paint this surface. They received the permission from the Montana Department of Transportation, and they received some other funding from different businesses and individuals. And they wanted to put something on it, cover up the graffiti, make it look like something. But they had something very different in mind. So they were a little shocked, I think, when they read my proposal, which was so different. We didn't have any kind of wildlife landscape murals in Billings before that. Everything was very contemporary or community mural type, like kind of collage style. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but my proposal was just a little different. They thought something more human-centered, maybe even kind of political. And mine was kind of took all the humans away from that and no political message, just kind of a message of beauty and hope in the darkest, ugliest space in our city.
Well, and just to kind of describe what it looks like now.
Yeah, now it's sunset colors, the yellows, oranges, pinks, the really warm, feel-good colors. And there is a sunburst at both ends so that there's like the light at the end of the tunnel both ways. And there is pretty much every single type of native animal, plant, and bug you can find in the area. So there's bison and there's elk and there's bears and there's birds of all kinds. There's little hidden arrowheads and um, like a life-size ladybug, all kinds of things hidden throughout. And it covers the ceiling and the columns of the walkway also. So when you walk through, it's like an immersive experience. There's like tree branches that go overhead and birds flying above you, a little squirrel peeking down out of the tree. And so there's a lot to it. I think I put 70 something different creatures in it. It took, I think altogether, it took probably close to 1,500 hours to paint.
Yeah, and I mean, just to echo that sentiment of public service, you were not really paid for this mural in any meaningful way. I mean, I think it was $1,000 that you were commissioned.
$700.
$700, yeah.
And then I used every penny of that to buy fine art paint to use in it to get the really vibrant whites and yellows and some of the blues in the animals' eyes. And I used it to purchase special brushes and things like that. So every penny of it went back into the
probably
project.
And then some. I mean, I'm even thinking about that mural we're doing at Family Promise right now, and I think we're already well over $1,500 just in paint for that mural.
Yeah.
Just to give some perspective. So not only did you probably lose a little bit of money just on supplies, but then spent 1,500 hours. I mean, like like that's hard to quantify. And even just kind of hearing you talk about it as you talk about like the squirrel peeking out and like, I mean, you can see it in your mind. I can clearly see that while I'm talking to you, that you can see all those little squirrels and the hidden artifacts that people can go into that immersive tunnel and you know, it goes under the train tracks and like, it just is dark and dismal and was graffitied and there are people that panhandle there. And then like, instead of what all of us remember before your mural was there, now it's this immersive, you know, walk into like history, into the symbols of our city and our state and the Wild West. And I mean, it's so cool.
And it's bright and colorful now. It's crazy how a little bit of paint can make a space feel so much brighter, change the whole environment. People would go miles out of their way to not walk through the underpass every day. And when they heard it was being painted, they changed their route to come through, and now they use it every day because it feels so much safer. They want to walk through it. And I think it's drawn a lot of people not just people looking at it, but it's encouraged more people to pass through. So then it's in turn kept it a little safer. People feel more comfortable because there's a lot of activity in there. And someone with the Billings Police Department told me that after I had painted it, they hadn't received a single call for any kind of crime in that underpass after it had been painted.
Yeah, which too, if we want to go into that at some point in time, I mean, there's so much data that tells us that if you inject some art or some beauty or some life into some of these spaces, it actually causes a reduction in crime, which is such a fascinating thing, that there is a direct link between, you know, public art especially and crime reduction, which is an exciting,
it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, but I kind of want to hear more about this story though first, which is, I know it was a really rich experience for you painting that mural. So we're talking about you spent 1,500 hours in a train bridge, painting this thing and
patrol under the bridge.
Yeah, and met a lot of people, and
so many people.
What are the stories that come to mind?
Oh my goodness, I spent 100 the first year. I spent 100 consecutive days in there, and I didn't take a single day off until the end. I had another prior engagement, so I took like 2 days off, I think, close to the end, and then came right back and finished it up. But
it was a marathon.
It was 100 days painting. It just depended on the condition. Sometimes it would snow. Other times it was like 108 degrees, because I started this project at the end of July, beginning of August, and then it went all the way into November. So it was an all summer and then fall type of project. So I got all the weather conditions, but every day to begin with, I started keeping track of some of the nice things that happened to me, because almost immediately, as soon as we started putting like just blank primer on the surface. People started honking and waving. And it was so funny. We were laughing. We were like, this is so weird. It doesn't even look like anything. And people are already all excited. And the more it became something, the more things started happening. But immediately people started bringing like lemonades and coffees, and they would stop and talk about their experience with that underpass, some personal connection they have to it. I started getting little gifts, and every single day I received at least one random act of kindness. And I recorded them all in the notes app in my phone, and the list goes on and on and on. And there was like one little girl saved up her allowance to buy me a Little Caesars pizza one day. And one man gave me a book that he had that had some different art in it, and he just felt compelled to give it to me. A homeless man gave me his last $4 because he said that it gave him so much. He started to cry when he looked at it. It was almost finished at this point, and he had like slept in there, and he passed through there, and all of a sudden it was something beautiful, and it impacted him so deeply that I tried not to take his money, and he just shoved it into my hand and walked away because he just felt compelled to give me everything he had, which was pretty amazing. I got tobacco blessings from homeless Native Americans. I got coffees and waters and tacos. People would hand me like it was like, I think it was their personal lunch. They'd be driving by and they just hand me food out the window. And some people would stop and walk down and talk, and people would come through every day on their way to work. So I got to know a lot of the people who walked through there every day and hear their stories about. Some people told me about their time in prison learning to draw, and everybody, it was pretty amazing. People from all different walks of life felt moved by this project. I think because it was in such a dirty, ugly space.
Just kind of watching you talk about that, I mean, I can see how much meaning there is for you. And
Yeah, for sure.
like what comes up when you reflect on all those?
It definitely changed my life. It gave me even more of a desire to keep creating art for people from all different walks of life and people who may not have access to beauty or fine art. There's restrictions for art. You know, not everybody has money to go out and buy art. Not everybody can go into a museum. Not everybody feels welcome in a museum, and not everyone lives in affluent neighborhoods that have beautiful homes and architecture. And providing a little bit of beauty that people can look at every day that kind of belongs to them is really meaningful for me.
So it's almost like bringing the museum to them.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing some fine art, a museum, a gallery, whatever, bringing some sort of beauty to them and telling them that they matter, that they deserve beautiful things too.
And so you went into this experience really not knowing. I mean, it was COVID. All of us were probably depressed at that point in time, like trying to figure out what we were doing.
For sure. I had no idea. I was shocked the first time someone gave me, a bottle of water, and then a lady brought some ice cream bars, and I was so shocked by these things, and then they kept happening. I never expected any of the acts of kindness that I received. One night I was painting, I was trying to finish up, and I had my paints in my pickup, and my mom was there with me because it was just after dark. It was in November. So it started to get dark a little earlier. I think it was like 6 o'clock in the evening. And I went up to go get some more paint, and I saw that my windows were shattered in both my car and my mom's car. And my mom's purse was gone, and it had her wallet with her credit cards and some money, and it also had my brother's medications, my brother's ID. And so it was pretty traumatic. And the police officer showed up, and he said he would sit up there and do paperwork as long as I wanted to paint that night. So he did. He sat there for a long time and watched over our vehicles while I painted. But I was pretty angry and sad that that had happened to us while we were painting and giving of ourselves. And this car stopped in the middle of the road and it was dark. And this old man jumped out and came running across the street and handed me a $50 bill. And I just started like bawling. And he like thought I was like a crazy person. He was like, what the heck? And then I was like, you don't understand. Like our windows just got like shattered. And then he like restored my faith in humanity like immediately. It was pretty incredible moment.
So like when almost your faith, like your belief,
when it
what
was
you're
like
doing with
shattered like the windows.
painting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It was like he knew somehow that I needed that in that moment. But he said he had been wanting to give me some money for the longest time, but the traffic was always so busy. And then he was driving through and it was nighttime and there was nobody around and I was there painting with like a little headlamp on my head and he stopped and jumped out of his car and ran across the road, left his car running in the middle of the road. It was pretty meaningful for sure. That was one of the most meaningful
So
acts of
just
kindness.
the kind of the tears that are coming up.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
How would you explain them if you could give them a voice almost?
It's very mixed emotions because it was so sad and heartbreaking that someone would damage our vehicles while we were working, and it was two different cars that they broke the windows out of. And but it's more of a feeling of joy and love because someone was willing to restore my faith in humanity at that time at like the lowest point. And I was exhausted because I had been working for probably 14, 15 hours that day and every other day before that. So it was a challenge, the whole process. It was an emotional roller coaster. There were ups and downs for sure.
I mean, it's almost a window into the worst and the best of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you put yourself in the epicenter of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And also didn't give up.
Yeah, there was some interesting experiences. Someone had a heart attack in the intersection as he was driving through, and and people jumped out of the car. His car just like stopped, and people jumped out of the car, and I, of course, ran across the street, and they had already called 911. But so we saw things like that. There were people sleeping in the underpass, and there were some angry people, but the joy was just overwhelming. There were people who had absolutely nothing, and they felt the need to give me something when they had nothing. And that was pretty amazing. And all because of a painting. I mean, it wasn't like I was, building them a house or something like that. I was just painting an underpass.
But it was an initiation point for an outpouring that you witnessed personally.
Yeah. So then it encouraged me to keep going. So we applied for the same micro grant. It was through the Space to Place, Big Sky Economic Development. We applied for that the following year so that I could expand the 6th Street underpass and paint the ceiling and the insides of the columns. And then the 13th
I didn't realize there was a round two.
Yeah. So the first part was just one side. And then the second part was the ceiling and the columns. And then the other slope on the other side of the street with the bison and walking down the hill.
Yeah.
And then also that year was the 13th Street underpass. So then I put another, 1,000 hours that year into a project where I didn't get paid again, but I got paid more than enough in acts of kindness
and sort of generosity.
Yeah, that was amazing. And people were excited to donate the second time around, so we didn't really have to search for the funds for paints the second year because people were so generous and so excited to hear that there was going to be a second time. I think they didn't really know what to expect the first time around, so people were hesitant because they didn't
understand.
They didn't have a picture in mind, and people didn't know what I was going to be painting because I didn't have like a concept right away. But when I I did create a concept. I had to have a focus group type of thing with different community members approve this
She went through all these
design.
pages. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so I made a small scale design, but it ended up being like 12 feet long, I think, just to be like a foot high because it was to scale. So it was a really long and narrow piece. But um, I made that design exactly what I ended up painting, and I used that design to translate it to the surface because you can't really step back into the street and see if everything's to scale. You're kind of trapped in this underpass. So I really leaned on that design to know how tall to make everything and to know how much paint to order. I'd never painted a mural before, and so I used that design to translate, figure out square footage based on this little design, and to figure out how many gallons of each color I would need and all of that. That way we wouldn't get, too much of
Just a huge learning
anything.
curve. Yeah, to go and undertake these
And it was
massive
amazing
projects,
that
yeah.
it all worked out. I
Mhm.
mean, everything went, I guess, as perfectly as it could have for that, especially first time around.
But so clearly something impacted you at such a deep level that you, even after spending 1,000 hours, even after having your cars broken into,
Mhm.
even after, like really just dwelling in that place where that darkness was present. I mean, you went into a dark place and you brought light. And of course, darkness is going to kick back like it just always does. But you came away with something that was so inspiring for you
Yeah.
that you kept going, that you were like, oh, where can I donate the next 1,000 hours of my existence?
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't wait to do it again.
And so what would you say to all those people who stopped by and who showed their love in whatever way that they could?
Thank you. There's really, it's so hard to articulate how much it impacted me. You can really only tell people thank you, but they gave me so much by giving of themselves. And it means so much that they were willing to keep giving the whole several years that I created public art. And even now today, whenever I do public art, or if I go clean up the underpasses, people honk and wave, and sometimes people still stop, which is pretty amazing. And sometimes people will recognize me in like a drive-through if I'm going through to get a coffee, and a car in front of me will pay for my coffee because they know who I am, which is pretty funny to me. But they recognize, I think, my bright blue pickup from sitting at the underpass for 100 straight days. But
When there's so many other stories too, because
oh my gosh,
the
yeah.
underpass has had this like life force, like cars crashing into it, like
Yeah,
the city
yeah.
accidentally power washing it off.
Yeah.
I want to say something prior to, and we can tell them because I think capturing the story because the underpass is sort of this life form in and of itself.
Yeah, it
It
is.
started off as this idea and then grew in your heart and
Mhm.
in your passion, and then grew in the hearts of other people in our city. But I also think it sparked off what I would call a movement. And I just don't really recall a lot of public art out there. And I think it's you and there's probably a few others. Ellie Swan comes to mind, and maybe you can talk about some of the other artists that were involved in the early stages of what I would almost call like a public art renaissance. And I mean, you just can't drive anywhere any longer without seeing murals on every surface.
Yeah.
And there are so many artists that I think caught this inspiration. And we've seen this wave, this uprising of public art and public beauty. And I even think, because I've gotten involved too, and now we've painted,
Right.
like 10 of these murals together. And, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those projects. But our belief, like the belief of the community and the belief of our leaders and the belief of, and I just have this vision, like, I mean, I remember being interviewed on the news when we came out as the most depressed city in the nation. I don't know if you remember that. I was interviewed for that article.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yes, it's tragic, and like that was not a fun interview to give.
No.
But I just have this vision for our community where we change our narrative, where instead of
Right.
having more depressed people per capita, we have more public art spaces per family or something like that. Like we're known as the city with the most vibrant public art.
When I first started painting the underpass, before it really looked like anything, I think, people would stop and they would say, "Oh, have you been to Great Falls? They have so many murals." And, "Oh, have you seen Great Falls? They have a lot of murals." All kinds of people said this. And now when I go to Great Falls, they talk about Billings and
I
they
love
talk
that.
about the underpasses and they want murals like that. And which is so funny that it's kind of come full circle. And other
Mhm.
towns have reached out and told me that they were inspired by
Mhm.
my underpasses and by the public art in Billings and that they're inspired to do that for their city.
Mhm.
So right now, I just finished up actually yesterday a mural for Miles City, and they were inspired by those projects, and they wanted me specifically to leave my mark on Miles City. So I just
Well, you can
completed a
just,
project for them.
yeah, see this being there being an inflection
Yeah.
point in here, you know? So, you think about that journey that you went on under there where it was just an idea and then you went in
Mhm.
and you put in the hours and like there was heartbreak, but also this outpouring of love
Oh yeah.
and inspiration, and then that caught on. It was
Mhm.
sort of a spark that then that caught on for other artists and caught on for
For
other community
sure.
members, and now even has an imprint that is extended beyond just our
Mhm.
city itself, and like because you can just you feel that energy like a building wave, and I think that's one of the reasons I was so excited for this podcast in particular, but so excited to work with you on all these projects is, I feel like as a community leader that there's some responsibility for me to help keep that momentum and that energy because all of these things take a lot of work, like,
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot
yeah,
of money, a lot
all
of
of those things.
time.
Yep.
Yeah, so it is encouraging to see people like you who are so willing to support that and to kind of keep that going.
Well, and it was like what really grabbed me, and it's why I reached out to you back so long ago, was like what a high risk endeavor you had taken on. And I don't know if you how much awareness you had, but like not only did you put yourself personally at risk, you volunteered your time, you
Hmm.
donated so much of yourself, but like also there was no guarantee that that end product would be protected in any way, shape, or form. I mean, like
Right,
from where I
right.
was sitting, the most likely outcome was that people were just going to come graffiti right over the top of it, just to spite like
Hmm.
all that is good, because I mean people can get so bitter and broken. Like I don't say that to criticize people who are hurting. I just that to me was like the most likely outcome, and so it was the bravery of what you went and did that really captured my attention, and that has not been the case. We've seen it, and so I want to like
No,
kind of
not at
touch on that
all.
that
Yeah.
that really nobody has attempted to graffiti over it.
No, not at all. When I was working on it, I talked to several of the people who do the graffiti
Mm,
around town,
yeah.
and they stopped and talked to me. One said, "Oh, you're the one covering up all my tags." And I was like, "Well, which one are you?" And he kind of laughed and he pointed out his tags and that he didn't really say a whole lot, but some of them said that they would never dream
Yep.
of tagging my murals and that they've told their friends and they really respected
Mhm.
that I was putting so much work into it. I wasn't just covering them up or putting up like bad art or
Yep.
just covering them up for the sake of covering them up. I was putting so much effort and time into making it look beautiful. And they would never dream of tagging that. And they would tell their friends not to touch it either. And one guy told me that I inspired him to not graffiti
Mm.
anymore and to start doing art instead. And he showed me some of his work, and it was
That's
actually
cool.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And another one told me he was inspired by my work to become sober from drugs and alcohol. And
Wow.
he stopped
Yeah.
graffitiing surfaces as well.
Yeah.
So you never know who it can touch and who a specific work of art can touch in a special way.
And I think we're just touching on the heart of the power of love and generosity.
Yeah, yeah.
That can be, I even think of right now, like we're talking, we just rerouted, and we can touch on this later, money from the YAM to the police department. And I think that sometimes there's just this default that like the best way to control hardship or poverty is control, right? Is power,
Hmm.
enforcement. And I would argue the opposite of that, that sometimes the best way to really impact people who are hurting is with love, and you can like you can reduce crime that way, and you can reduce poverty that
Hmm.
way, and it's not to say that the two don't work in tandem. They certainly do, but hearing these stories, it just exemplifies that phenomenon of sometimes it's that act of kindness, sometimes it's that
Hmm.
injection of beauty that is actually the spark that turns somebody away from potentially a life of crime or potentially a,
Yeah.
a life
You
And
never know who can be impacted by a random act of kindness, a sign of, love, or something beautiful that can change their life.
what I love it too, it's a really intriguing phenomenon to me, but the street has a code. You know what I mean? Like the people that live there, and I mean
Yeah.
from unhoused people to gang members. And to me, this is so interesting because it's like what you did somehow, and what a lot of the public artists have done somehow passes muster for whatever that street code is. Like they respect it. And
Hmm.
because I think it's not just your murals specifically that don't get tagged, don't get covered up, don't get, and so like even the one we're doing at Family Promise right now, it's right next to the skate park,
Hmm.
and it's with Sunshine. She's a phenomenal artist. Please, anybody who's listening, go over there and honk and say hi and bring her some lunch and some acts of kindness as well. But like that place, so if there's a brick wall that's right outside of Family Promise, and the unhoused population there truly are using it as a bathroom and have
Hmm.
there's like a hiding place right behind a dumpster, and so we've scraped off feces and urine, and like that's what's happening there. But like even as Sunshine has started adding color and adding layers, that like all the people who live there and stay there are honoring her and honoring
Hmm.
that space, and they're like agreeing to make sure people don't do those types of things. And so it's just weird it's fascinating
It
to
is,
see
yeah.
these hurting people respond, and like
And
they want it
I
too.
think,
They want to protect it.
yeah, taking ownership of a space and showing that it's important makes other people respect it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I want to kind of rewind things and go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Because this is the purpose of this podcast is to tell the whole story, but like just how you got into art, what originally inspired you when you started doing art.
Hmm.
You've been hanging out with my daughter Huxley, who is a burgeoning artist as well, and I know you mentioned seeing some of yourself in her. I mean, but I just like, yeah, let's go back to the beginning and talk about what led you to become an artist.
Yeah, a lot like Huxley. I would spend hours in my room drawing and doodling and coloring, and I was always a very kind of creative child in that way, but no clear vision. None of my stuff was inspired. It was just more for fun.
Yeah, you just
And
do
I
it.
would spend time in my room, like doing little drawings like at Christmas time, and I'd wrap them up in wrapping paper and throw them under the tree and run back to my room and do another. And make little drawings for everyone in my family and little cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, things like that. I've always loved to share my work. That's what I love.
Hmm.
And I told my parents when I was little that I was going to be an artist when I grew up. And they thought it was cute and kind of funny. And they just like laughed, and nobody ever took that seriously. And I myself didn't take that seriously. I never did art like for real until much later. I went to high school, and I was homeschooled until I went to high school.
Through eighth
So
grade or through?
yeah, through
Okay,
eighth grade. I went to like through first grade at public school, and then I was
interesting.
homeschooled, um, partly because of my brother. And my mom thought, well, if I'm homeschooling him, then I might as well homeschool her too, which was great. It gave me a great childhood, a lot of
And let's
freedom,
just
and
pause there too, because that's another one of
yeah,
our connection points that I'm hoping to kind of talk a little bit about. But obviously, my son Gentry has special needs, has Down
right.
syndrome, and just survived a bone marrow transplant, and we got back, and that's been a huge point I think of connection for us.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your
For
brother
sure.
has special needs as well, and has been a huge part. I mean, he's so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we can tell the birthday party story a little bit later, but that's been a huge part of your upbringing and probably your
Yeah.
inspiration.
Yeah.
But so he was homeschooled. Your
Mm-hmm.
mom homeschooled him, and then as
Yeah.
a response to that, decided to
To
homeschool you
homeschool
as
me as
well.
well. Yeah, he had some troubles in school, and he was kind of bullied by some of the kids and by some of the teachers. And so it just wasn't a good fit, and it was kind of difficult. And someone pushed him down on the playground one day, and he doesn't have reflexes like everybody else, so he couldn't catch himself, and he hit his head
Mm.
on the asphalt and had a big, like, kind of a black eye and a banged up face. And so they made him sit in a wheelchair and wear a helmet at recess every
Oh
time after
God.
that. And there was like, no, they wouldn't let him play and be a kid. So my mom thought, well, I could give him, an own education and a better childhood on my own. And so
She's so gentle too, Evan.
yes,
He's like just the sweetest like personality.
yeah,
Like he wouldn't have been like out starting things or anything.
no, never,
That would be like an
never.
act of viciousness
Yeah,
that you're describing. That
yeah. And so they took us both out of school and homeschooled us, and it was great. We would do all of our school. If we finished it all super fast, then we could just play for the rest of the day. And my mom did some little like homeschool arts and craft classes where she would invite other homeschool families over, and their kids would come, and she would do like a little craft project with everyone, and we'd make like little like Easter bunnies and glue cotton ball tails on them, and just different little projects like that. And so we kind of had a little social group that way. And
did I tell you I was homeschooled as well through 6th grade?
oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, I blame all my social awkwardness on
Yeah.
not properly being socialized. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, same. That's funny. No, I didn't know that.
So were you identifying or practicing art while you were in homeschool, or
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. More just crafts and just kind of for fun, not really like anything serious. When I went to high school, though, because I was homeschooled, they didn't accept all of my credits or anything. They didn't have, I guess, a proof that I could do certain classes. And so I wanted to take the more advanced math classes, and I couldn't take them all unless I doubled up and took several a year. And so I took 2 math classes my freshman year, and I also had like science and history and English and all of that. And navigating the whole social part, I went to a private school where most of the kids knew each other or knew at least someone. And I knew nobody. And it was a very cliquey type of school, and I chose art as my elective, and I was super, super excited to take it because I thought, oh, that'll be fun. It'll be relaxed. It'll be easy. It'll be like an outlet basically during my day.
Well, and just to kind of even, I don't know, give some context to that too, because I went through some of those same things,
Yeah.
where you go to a school and, the friend groups have already formed and you're just,
You're an
it's almost,
outsider,
yeah,
and yeah,
and you just don't know where you connect.
right.
And that is a really hard transition point for anybody
It's hard.
who's been gone from homeschool into public school like that. It is a really challenging transition.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-homeschool by any means.
No.
There is a lot of value in it. My mother did an incredible job, but that transition is just very, very challenging.
Yeah, it was for sure. I think especially going into a smaller school where everybody already kind of knew each other. They had gone to school their whole lives together, most of the kids. There were some that didn't and that came in, but usually they knew, 1 or 2 kids and from their school, and so they could kind of find a place to fit in. And I didn't really have that to begin with. And so I was really excited for art class.
So you elected,
I think naturally that was just seemed like a good fit because I was creative and I looked forward to having some kind of like formal instruction. And it was my hardest class. It was my worst class. I dreaded it so much. I had so much anxiety about going to the class because it was very rigid, and the teacher would draw angry faces all over my artwork. I was taking 2 math classes and science. I was taking like biology, and I was taking English and history and all of these classes. And my hardest class was art. And I did.
It almost sounds like a suppression of creativity.
It was,
Like
yes.
you had all this creative,
Yeah.
just like this voice that you were looking to find a home for. And instead of amplifying that voice or allowing you space to find your voice, it was boxed off. And
Fortunately, she had a lot of extra credit projects that you could do in your free time. And she would give extra credit points for doing these extra projects. And so I spent a lot of time doing extra credit pieces just to keep my grade,
so crazy.
Passing grade, because it was such a hard class.
Well, and so this is kind of a point I was hoping to touch on as well, because a huge part of this podcast is talking about mentorship and those people who have a role in shaping our
Hmm.
lives. And one of my favorite pieces of research showed they did it on the criminal justice system, and so they looked at people who were in the criminal justice system and then found people who had managed to exit that, not recidivize, and go on to lead productive, healthy, meaningful lives. And every single one of them could remember one thing,
Yeah.
which is somebody in their life who saw them, believed in them, and just saw the best in them. And even when they fell down, or even when they, like,
Right.
and so to me, that's such a fascinating piece of research. But I'm always intrigued in talking
Hmm.
to people who have achieved, meaningful things and what got them there. Because I think everybody has somebody like that in our lives. But there's also um, the antithesis of that, the
Yeah.
counter side of that story, where there are people who just shot
That
us down.
overshadows
Mhm.
the good a lot of times.
Yep, and I mean, you talk about ACEs, but we also talk about positive childhood experiences, PCEs, and they can counterbalance each other. But I know this art class for you, because you've shared this story with me in the past, was one of those instances where
Yeah.
you were at a vulnerable period in your life and looking to find you looking to find your voice, which truly it's undeniable. Like, you're an artist now. Like, so
Yeah.
this teacher at this point in time was utterly wrong.
Yeah.
And it infuriates me. Like, I'm heartbroken for you as a young girl, that instead of being nurtured, instead of having somebody
Right.
who saw your potential.
And I'm sure that it happened to, I don't think I was the only one, I'm sure there were other students, and maybe she's targeted certain students as well. I don't know that, but I know that a lot of the students did not like her, and they struggled in the class as well. But she had her favorites. I know there were some that she definitely favored over others, and I don't know why that is, and they had kind of a different experience in the class. But she was a troubled soul as well, and I think she had a lot of mental health issues on her own, and it kind of just reflected in that
So
in the way she was a teacher.
out of the maturity that you have now, and
Hmm.
out of the confidence for having found but like, you were just like a little girl.
Yeah, I was like 14 or
Yeah.
so. I was a little older than some of the students, I think, because my birthday is in October, and I think the cutoff, it was in October
Hmm.
for the grade. So I could have been either really young, like freshman, my sophomore year, or I could have been, or vice versa. So I was a little older, fortunately,
Hmm.
because I think when you're at that age, every year makes a huge difference,
Hmm.
when you're an adolescent. So fortunately, I wasn't, 13 instead of 14,
Hmm.
but especially in that environment where I didn't know anybody. I was trying to fit in. I didn't have anywhere to eat lunch. I ate lunch in like the bathroom by myself sometimes, and because I just didn't know where to go. And it it was very hard to have a class that I thought was supposed to be fun and lighthearted and easy become like the hardest class that I had. And so because of that, I swore that I was never going to draw or paint or anything again. And I
It was
didn't.
such a profoundly traumatic experience.
Hmm.
And, like, we don't need to name this teacher, but my
No.
God, I mean, like, if you're out there and you listen to this, like, you just did a bad job. Like, the guy, like, it's so infuriating to me, like, and just so clearly, like, like, your outcome and your trajectory
Hmm.
and where you're at right now is just like, it just exemplifies like how we can have an impact in young people's lives, and how it's our
Right.
duty, I think, to nurture and to see the best in people and bring that out. And there are
Yeah.
people who just fail at that. So,
Hmm.
and some of those people are teachers, and to me, it's just heartbreaking that she may have done that to you, and she may have done
And
that
others, and yeah,
to others as
of
well. And
course.
probably part of her legacy is she had a positive impact on some, but like, this is an instance of an absolute failure
Hmm.
as a teacher. And so I'm sorry for you. And I'm sorry that is so out of that, the level of trauma. I mean, you were a little girl, you wanted to be an
Yeah.
artist, and then you take your first art class and get
And I was like,
angry face
no,
mask,
no
and
more,
you're like, no more. Yeah,
no more
yeah.
art, no more. Yeah, I
So
didn't
how long
do
did that
anything.
last for?
I I had to take another elective, and because I had already taken art was my my first year, I took art again, and I thought I'd just suffer through it. And so I did do it for 2 years. She, I think, retired halfway through my second year, so I
Really?
didn't really have to
Good.
deal with her much. And
Yeah.
we didn't have a teacher for like half of the year. It was we had a sub, and we just kind of did some art history stuff online, and so very different that year. I don't think I don't know that I even created any art that second year really, but the second half I did do a little bit for kind of for the class, but and it wasn't as terrible of an experience, but I wasn't inspired. I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel that I was any good at it, of course, and I really wasn't. I wasn't very good. Looking back at my stuff, it wasn't. It wasn't anything remarkable. It wasn't anything inspired. It was just another kid in an art class. But I went to college, and I was on a strict medical path, and um, to graduate,
You were
I
going to
was
go be a doctor. Yeah, that was
I
your.
was going to be a doctor.
Uh-huh.
Yep, yep. And I was required to take an art class.
Yeah,
And
prereqs. So yeah, everybody's got to take
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah. And I tried to see if there was a way around it. I read the fine print to see if I could take something else, but it was a specific type of art. It was like the fine arts, like the drawing and the painting. So I took ceramics, which was the farthest thing from like the painting and drawing that I did in high school. And I did ceramics and thought, I could just make some bowls and things like that and get that credit out of the way and be done. And um, we had some more creative projects. It wasn't just making bowls, and we had to create like a shoe that represented your personality and all kinds of other things. And I really loved it. And I started making all kinds of unique things. And
What kind of a shoe did you make?
I made a cowboy boot.
Totally.
And it was a colorful cowboy boot modeled after one that I had, and different colors, different stitching. I put a lot of detail into it and tried to make it
and anybody that
alive.
doesn't know you, like you are a cowgirl. So you're, artistic persona. When I came to your studio the first time, I mean, you have horses out there, a pasture, and
Yep,
you're a
right
cowgirl.
outside.
I think you ride too, and
Oh yeah.
do rodeos,
Yep,
and
yep, for sure. So yeah, I did a cowboy boots and some other creative things. And one day I showed up to class. We all had our little space. We had like a cabinet underneath our desk space where we would store our clay and our supplies and projects we're working on, things like that. And I showed up, and all of these professors were around my spot, and they were looking at my things, and they were talking, and they offered me a scholarship to study art in Italy for a semester. But in order to go, I had to add art as a major.
Yeah.
And I had like, I think I had biology as a major, and then I had chemistry and psychology as minors. And I was like, well, I don't really want to add art as a major also. And then I thought, well, I guess I can add it. I can get the scholarship. I can go to Italy, and then I can drop the major, and I will still have that study abroad experience and all of that. And so
you can't pass that.
yeah, so I went to the office, and I added art as a major, and I accepted the scholarship, and I spent a semester in Italy, and that is where I painted for the first
But I'm
time.
so curious. So is that the first instance? Because you're kind of talking about this like the little
Yeah.
girl in your room, and then bad experiences in high
Yeah.
school, and then all of a sudden you're just in an art class that you didn't want to be in,
Yeah.
and then you walk into class, and these professors, like, is that the first time you can remember anybody really seeing your?
Yeah, my ceramics professor was amazing from the beginning. She would like find something good to say about every single person's project. And it wasn't like fake. It wasn't, so she wasn't just complimenting them to be complimenting them. She would find one good thing, at least one good thing about every single person's project. She's like, wow, you did this really well, and maybe improve XYZ or something like that. But she encouraged me and uplifted me from the very beginning. She was incredible and an amazing person that way. And
So in
that
some ways,
was
she was the counterbalance to this
yeah,
really
yeah, for
negative.
sure. So then it was her husband and then one more art professor that all worked there together that that offered me this scholarship, and I went with those professors specifically to Italy to study. And so I had, another class with her, and then I got to see her around and work with her husband and with my painting professor, and they were all incredible. And in Italy, I painted for the first time, and it was watercolors, totally different than what I do now, with the very vibrant oils. But that was kind of my first like fine art experience of really trying. And my parents came to visit me in Italy. They had like a parents' week where parents could come and spend a week with us and travel and take some tours and things like that and stay at the villa with us. And my parents arrived, and my professor was the first person to tell them that I was an artist. And I don't think they really like believed it until they saw all of my work like hanging on a wall. And I had all of these paintings that I had just done in class, and they were kind of shocked. I think they were kind of blown away.
But hearing that almost spoken out loud, like this is Alyssa. Alyssa is an artist.
Yeah, and now that's what I am, and that was, I think, the first time that I had ever thought of myself as an artist was at that point. And I didn't hear
Other
him
than a
say
little
that,
girl
but
fantasizing.
and I thought I was going to be an artist when I was little. I thought without a doubt. I don't know why. It was just, I knew. Somehow I knew that that's what I was supposed to be ultimately.
And then you came back and did what?
And I came back, and I loved it too much to stop. So I kept the major, and I was like a junior in college at this point. And I took a couple more classes just to finish off the major. I believe I had a minor by the time I came back from Italy because I had so many classes. But I decided to take some more and to keep the major. And I had a senior art show. And I received the school's art award when I graduated as well, which was like a surprise. But I received the art award, and I had a senior art show, and I sold more works out of the school's gallery than anyone in history ever had. And it was the most like successful art show they thought they had ever had in the professors' like 30 years of teaching there. And
just a defining moment of you reclaiming
like from that time on, I was a professional artist. And so it was never like anything I had planned. It just happened. And then I kept thinking, well, I have too many like commissions right now, and I'm selling work, so I will apply for medical school next year. And then, oh, well, I'll do that next year. And it never happened because here I am.
So this is kind of always a heavy question, but if you could go back in time and talk to that little girl who was, first dancing around in her room, dreaming of being an artist, what would you tell her now?
To don't give up on that random, completely odd dream, because that's who you will be. And that is who I am somehow, by some like miracle. I never planned for it, but it was all like it was meant to be. Everything just kept aligning and falling into place to end up where I am today, where I'm not just an artist and not just creating art, where I am able to give of myself and give art to the community and completely help change a community. It's pretty incredible.
There's now this abundance that came out of searching.
And something that was never planned. None of it was planned. It all just happened, which is pretty incredible. It's kind of like a win the lottery type of thing.
That all of these events could align in this way to get you to where you are. I mean, it's just, like there's no debate about it. Like, it's Alyssa. She's an artist,
Yeah.
And truly one of my favorite artists of all time. So I'll throw my hat in that mix. Well, so I want to talk, one last piece is about one of the most interesting things that I've ever encountered, this, potentially very rare phenomenon, but at some point you had a heart surgery.
Yeah.
And so even prior to that point in time.
That was another thing that added up to this.
Yeah.
In time.
So when was the heart surgery?
I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
I was like 17 years old.
And so prior to this heart surgery, I mean, you could draw, you could paint, you had artistic ability, but you couldn't do it out of your imagination,
Yeah,
which is
nothing was inspired. I couldn't visualize scenes
Mhm.
to paint, really. It was just I mean, I'd try and I'd kind of just make up little scenes, but nothing was inspired. It was very generic, I
Yeah.
would say.
Which is, and I think this is similar to what we're talking about, but like I don't have no artistic ability. Like I can look at that cup and I could draw while looking at the cup. I could
Yeah.
create that cup and it would look quite a bit like that cup. But if I close my eyes or if that cup was taken away, I almost have no capacity whatsoever to draw that cup. And I think that's a little bit like what we're talking
Yeah.
about here, where when you went into the surgery, you were able to do that visually, but
Yeah,
once the surgery
somewhat.
happened, now you exclusively paint from imagination from your mind.
Right. Yeah, and part of it is that like what you're explaining, but part of it is making up scenes, like completely imagining a
Hmm.
scene in my head that I now paint. Everything that I paint is something that I envision. And I didn't have that before. I didn't see these like paintings that I create now. I couldn't see that before. And
So
then
crazy.
right after the surgery, I could see things so different. Like looking outside, I'd see the way like the light like hits the leaves and where there's like the shadows and different little reflections and the edges of something, the leaves overlapping with each other. I didn't see all of that before or notice it or pay attention, I guess.
Mhm.
But I noticed that right away. That was one of the first things I noticed after the heart surgery, was that things just looked different
Mm.
that way, like more detailed, I suppose. And then I could have these visions where I would just see things and make up things in my mind, uh, exactly what I paint. I see these scenes and I think, oh, that would be a good painting. Oh, this, I should paint this.
Like you just these mental images just
Yeah.
come into your
Yeah. And
mind.
I didn't have that before.
Mhm.
And for the longest time, I didn't paint those because they were, I had no desire to due to my prior
Trauma.
bad experience in art.
Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't do anything about that until I was in Italy painting.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I did a little bit through my clay. I could kind of visualize some things, and I made like a bear, and I made a hand uplifting a person, and different things like that. But um, all really started when I started painting in Italy. I was surrounded by, all these old masters like Da Vinci and
Oh, yeah.
Michelangelo, but I'm painting like Montana scenes. It was kind of interesting.
Because those were still present in your
Yeah,
mind's eye.
yeah,
Yeah. So it sounds like when you had the surgery, when almost like waking up from the anesthesia, there
yeah,
just was like something visually different
right.
that has enabled this sort of
Yeah.
expansive capacity to really see the world in all of its nuance.
Hmm.
And that came out of, and so we were talking about this a little bit earlier, that there's a syndrome called sudden savant syndrome.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like, so I'm my doctorate's in mental health counseling. And so it's,
But there's an overlap.
yeah, I certainly, but like even in the medical field, there's no diagnosis for this
Right.
because we work off of things that have gone wrong. And this is a very very
Yeah,
strange
this is
phenomenon.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not undocumented where somebody gets a concussion or somebody gets it, and then
Right.
all of a sudden on the other side of that they have like photographic memory or something like, but it's
Yeah.
extraordinarily rare, and that is kind of the terrain that we're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah, it was very interesting. The surgery itself was very like traumatic and it resulted in a lot of complications. And so I was in and out of the hospital for years after that. And they told me that I would have to have a pacemaker by the time I turned 30.
Mm,
And in like a few weeks here, I'll be turning 32 and I don't have a
yeah.
pacemaker. So I
Okay.
surpassed
That's
their
awesome.
expectations, I suppose. And that
Mhm.
kind of overcame I think my heart ended up healing itself over time, mostly. And I've gotten a lot better for sure. So pretty amazing for sure. And for a while, it was easy to feel like I regretted having the surgery just because it did result in all these complications. But looking back, I wouldn't have this capacity to create paintings.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Well, spam risk as well.
Of course, of
Uh,
course,
Get you.
always.
Yeah, so in some ways, and one of the phenomenon that I've really studied a lot is transformation, and what that means is like how we start off as one person and come out like come out on the other side having found ourselves or discovered ourselves, and there's a lot of like archetypal psychology that kind of we talk about sometimes, and there's sort of a narrative arc, and oftentimes we talk about like the hero's journey, but the hero has to go into the abyss.
Yeah.
There's this dark component of confrontation, and even symbols like the phoenix or something. It's a bird that is devoured by fire
Right.
and born out of the ashes is a symbol of transformation. And I just hear all of those components of this story, like as you eventually found your identity and your purpose and your
Mhm.
calling, and really discovered who you are. This was no easy journey that you've been
No.
on.
Yeah, it's been a rocky one. It's a roller coaster for sure, but all of these components have fallen into place to create this like perfect situation that's allowed me to be who I am now.
Yeah.
So I don't think without these obstacles, I don't know where I would be today, but certainly wouldn't be here.
And now it's this place of abundance where
Yeah.
you can bless the people in our city, and
Yeah.
bless those around you. And so it's like not only did you find yourself, but you found yourself in such a way that it's given you a gift
Yeah,
that you can
for
give.
sure.
And
And now on top of, all these hours that I've donated for public art, I've used my work to raise money for different charities and organizations. And my work has now raised well over $100,000 for local charities and nonprofits and
it's
things like
incredible,
that.
isn't it?
And
Yeah.
that's separate from my
Mhm.
murals, I mean, you can't really quantify a value that those have given, but
Mhm.
it's still those are donations as well and gifts of love to the community.
Yeah, yeah. And so would love to move the conversation towards some of our maybe our shared projects
Yeah.
and current projects, but even just what you said there is sort of interesting to me because, truly the painting that I have on my wall that I bought from you came from how inspired I was by the 16
Yeah.
underpass. And to me it's like it's a very interesting phenomenon in your artistic journey that like out of your generosity and self-sacrifice and what you've just given away, I also think it has brought you some notoriety as an artist. Like I think
Yeah.
because you've had such a presence in the public art community, which isn't necessarily, but like it also like people want your art for that reason. I mean, that's why I
Right, for
wanted your
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there's people like you, and other people, of course, who have reached out because they are now familiar with my name where they wouldn't have been otherwise, I think. And so it's been a blessing that way for sure for my fine art kind of
Mhm.
professional career, I
Mhm.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 'cause I do think that's so cool and almost even a message to young upcoming artists. And that was a point I wanted to touch on with you as well, because I know you invest a lot in the future of art and the
Yeah.
community of art, and you frequently pass up opportunities so that young artists can have
Yeah.
those opportunities to do the murals in the public spaces.
Right.
And to me, it's like that's such an interesting phenomenon that like that generosity can actually be one of those places where you enable yourself to become an artist. Because to be an artist, you have to sell art. Like
Yeah.
artists have to pay their
Yeah.
bills like everybody
Yeah.
else. And so truly, it's like an inversion instead of just trying to like like sell every painting that you can and just like
Right.
instead you
Yeah.
just gave it away. And in so many ways that was a founding part of your career.
Yeah, for me, it's not about money, of course. I mean, obviously, um, it's about the gift of art and, of course, creating art for myself because I
Mhm.
love doing it. I love creating art. And I think selling it is the way that I am able to keep giving
Mhm.
art.
Totally.
It's not like I'm doing it for money or else I wouldn't have given, years of my life to create these public art pieces. And I think a lot of people do it for wrong reasons. They do it for money and they think, oh, well, I can do all these paintings and sell them and make all this money. But I I don't think that would be a fulfilling way to live your life just for money.
Well, and because art is passion, and for so
Yeah.
many artists, like I think it's a message just worth highlighting that that if you keep what is most sacred and most important at the forefront of why you do what you do, that
Right.
can actually be a mechanism for unlocking a career.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that get annoyed because organizations do ask for donations all the
All
time,
the
art
time.
donations. And unfortunately, you can't write off, you can't get like the tax write-offs for
Mhm.
art. You can only write off the materials,
Mhm.
not any of your time or what the painting is. So like a $20 canvas is all you can write off as a donation
Yeah.
rather than, a work of art that's worth thousands. So, so people they do get tired, artists do, and I don't blame them for that. But a lot of times I think they get kind of bitter about it, and they don't want to donate their art, and they don't want to share their art, and but I think that's the beauty
So what
of
is your
it.
what's your message to future artists, upcoming artists who want to, I mean, you have an established career as an artist. Like that's what, where you landed. That's a hard thing to pull off. So other people that are entering that terrain and like, young artists who, maybe are looking to find their voice, what would you say to them?
To stay true to your passion and don't create art just because you think it's what will sell. Create what comes from the heart. Because I think that's what people will be drawn to. That's what's important is to create what you feel passionate about creating. So often I see people try to be something they're not and to create art in a style that's not inspired. And you can tell when an artist creates something that they're inspired by. Some are very contemporary style artists, some do very abstract work. And you can tell when they're truly passionate about
Mhm.
that type of work. The work just feels different. And then when they try to make it fit to something that it's, that they're not passionate about or something that they don't really want to do, they just do it for the sake of selling because that's what's trendy or that's what's popular. I think then they lose themselves and then they lose their love for creating.
Mhm.
And when you create what comes from the heart, you're not going to lose that passion for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. All right, so kind of the final things that I was really hoping to talk about were some of the shared projects that you and I
Yeah.
have worked on. And so this was, boy, I hatched this idea quite some time ago, and there's I think a few other people working on it too, like Melissa Henderson, but which is combining sort of mental health and public art. So we launched this campaign through the Suicide Prevention Coalition and my nonprofit, Pay Love Forward, and Riverstone Health has helped out a ton. But to incorporate 988, which is our crisis hotline, into murals. But one of the
Right.
reasons for that, one is it's a great resource, and to me, the like having those messages right next to each other is it's not only we see you, we care. Like
Right.
we're gonna come to you, like where you're at in your place of hurt, and give and do something beautiful and bring meaning into that space. But there's also a lifeline there because you go to the Sixth Street underpass, and most of the people who are walking through there are truly in crisis. And so
Mhm.
there is a resource, and 988 is a really great resource right now that is sustained. It should stick around for the foreseeable future, but there's a lifeline. So it's not only a message of we see you, we care, and we want to fight with you, but like there's also something practical that they can go do to get resources that they need. And so like to me, it's a really cool combination, but it also unlocked our ability to fund some of this public art. And so you and I have done 3 projects together. And I want
Yeah.
to talk about those because they're some of my favorite projects of all time.
So fun.
And then I think between the Coalition, Riverstone, and Pay Love Forward, we've painted almost 11 murals now with that incorporate
That's
988.
awesome.
And for me, it's like project management. And hopefully like when, you and I kind of came up with some of these ideas originally and really it was you and I who I think initiated this project and took it to its fruition, which now it's one of those mechanisms of growing this art renaissance, right? Like I don't
Yeah,
want to see public art go away. I want to sustain it. I want to give it energy and propel it forward because
of course.
what that Sixth Street underpass unlocked to me is it's a way of saying we care. Melissa always says it's a love letter to the community, and I just love those words.
Yeah.
And so the first one was at the YWCA, and to me that's one of the most sacred projects that I feel like
Right.
I've ever been a part of. And if you want to, you can tell the story, or I can tell the story.
Yeah, that one was really fun because it was in the shelter for abused women and their children, and it was in a very white institutional looking space. And on the top floor, there's a stairwell, and it was
Hmm.
just a white hallway basically.
Hmm.
And I had the vision to paint it and make it look beautiful, and then we collectively had this idea to make it like a little area with
Hmm.
furniture and a coffee pot, and make it a comfortable, cozy little space that makes it feel a little more homey and inspiring. And so I painted those bright, warm, feel-good colors all the way around, a bunch of flowers,
Hmm.
wildflowers, bison, a mama bison and her baby, and made some branches of the trees kind of wrap around the corners, and some little butterflies and birds flying off of those to kind of extend down the hallway a little
Hmm.
bit. And it's very, very warm and uplifting. And I was fortunate to allow the families to come and paint with me, and some little kids would come and pick up a brush and put some paint on the wall, and then drop their brushes and run outside to play basketball, and then come back
Hmm.
and pick up the brushes again and paint alongside me. So that was a lot of fun to let them be a part of it, something that they'll
Yeah.
remember, a good experience from living in the shelter.
Which is truly worth saying. And I think even back to what we were talking about earlier about the streets embracing your work and embracing public
Yeah.
art. But one of the things that you've done that I'm such a huge fan of is really bring the community into your artwork. So
Right. Yeah,
that
I
you did
always
that at the,
allow
yep.
anybody who wants to come
Uh-huh.
paint with me. People would be like driving by, they'd shout out the window, "Can I paint with you?" And I'd say yes.
Come
And
on over.
come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people walking by would just kind of stop and watch, and I'd say, "Do you want to paint?" And they'd say, "Well, I guess." And then I'd give them a brush and a little cup of paint and put them to work. And
Yeah.
I had hundreds of people paint with me during the Sixth Street
Hmm.
Underpass. And then I had quite a few families paint with me at the YWCA, several women and a whole bunch of little kids.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had someone reach out to me later and say that she was so sad she stayed with her kids. She was escaping an abusive relationship, and she stayed there with her kids, and she was right by where we painted that.
Hmm.
And she was so disappointed that it wasn't there when she was there, because it would have made all the difference in their experience having something like that.
Well, it's why that was such a sacred project to me. And there were so many partners too. The
Yeah.
JCs, helped donate some funds, and Michaela was amazing. And so Q2 helped cover the story so we could tell the community about
Yeah.
it. And so there was all these partners kind of mobilized around it. But it to me it carried that same essence that the Sixth Street Underpass has,
Right.
where we're going to those people who have been forgotten about. I mean, those are families, those are women who are
Yeah.
hiding for their lives. I mean, that's
Of
that's what's
course.
happening there. And they built this new building, and the building is amazing, and it's all these apartment complexes for temporary housing for women in transition as they escape those domestic violence type situations. But there was no pictures on the wall. It was totally, and they're working on that, but it was completely
Yeah,
institutional and truly depressing. Like you can imagine
for
being
sure.
a woman who is fleeing everything that you know with your two kids, and you're just like trying to get a job and trying to make life work, and
Yeah.
then you come home to an apartment an apartment that looks like a hotel room at best. And so instead of that, those women walked into just this message of beauty,
Yeah.
and that we care, and that you're not forgotten about. And to me that is like that's what hope looks like.
Right. Well, and that's part of the goal behind that one, was so that especially the little kids who had
Mhm.
to live there, that they will maybe remember the pretty mural they saw in
Mhm.
there when they were staying there, rather than all of the bad experiences of
Mhm.
fleeing their home and not having anywhere to go, and staying in this awful place. And instead, they have something beautiful to look at every
Mhm.
day when they leave and come back, and they can go
Mhm.
sit there and look at it. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and there's like a treasure hunt too. I remember
yeah,
like where
little,
find eight
there would be,
butterflies or
yeah, I put a
something.
bunch
Yeah.
of butterflies and ladybugs in it. Yeah,
Yep. So there's like
it's
a
fun.
scavenger hunt, and then we moved a couch in there, and we got a coffee
Yeah,
maker, and just really created a space like kind of a sanctuary for people in
yeah, and
crisis.
some games. I
Mhm.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was fun. It
And I
was
still
a
take over
fun
books and
project.
still take over stuff to
Oh,
try and care for that space because that's another thing that we can kind of talk about at some point. But that
yeah.
public art requires maintenance. Okay, so then the second project, and it's actually the third, I think, because in all of this, in our partnership for these murals, which like it was a lot of project management on my end, but a ton of
Right.
painting on your end. But then my son was diagnosed with leukemia,
Yeah.
and we had to go to Denver, and which is where I lived in a hospital room for a couple of years. But in between, then you painted the mental health center, and so I want you to tell that story, and I want
That
to.
one was fun too. That is in the most low income neighborhood in Billings, and also it has a disproportionately high ratio of suicide calls when you look at the Billings Police Department records. And so there's a lot of people that are suffering and that are depressed that walk by there, people who have absolutely nothing, um, and on a building that tries to help with that. I mean, I know it's mainly their operations, but a lot of people who were seeking help went in there while I was painting. And it's by North Park, and which is kind of sometimes known. It's a beautiful park, one of the most beautiful in Billings, but it's sometimes kind of has a bad reputation. But they put a lot of work into making
Yeah,
it beautiful
yeah.
and making it a nice space for the community. But yeah, I painted a big mural on the side of that using again the color psychology to be the uplifting colors, and that is a view from up on Four Dances, looking down over the Yellowstone River, and you can see the South Hills and the mountains in the distance. And there's some bison and elk in there, and rims and butterflies and little bugs in there as well. So that one was a lot of fun. I talked with a lot of people who were struggling, or a lot of people who appreciated it, a lot of people who have lived there in that neighborhood their entire lives. And they came to express their gratitude for the project because they appreciate the beauty and the act of love that went into beautifying their neighborhood. Because a lot of times people feel like, oh, all the good things are on the West End. And they put all the nice things on the other side of town. And so when something goes nice, when something's nice going up in their neighborhood, it's more meaningful.
We're so at the heart of Paylor Ford. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit about the West End. I'm not painting anything over there.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think any of my projects would feel as meaningful in like an affluent neighborhood. I don't think it would be appreciated the way it is in the communities with the most despair.
Yeah. I
That's my
love it,
favorite.
Alyssa. Like when you talk about this, I just see the raw emotion
Yeah,
and just
I
like how
love
meaningful
doing
this
that.
is for you. And
I've lived on the south side my entire life, and
yeah,
that's one of the lower income neighborhoods. And I see that we don't get a lot of nice things on that side of town. And I've seen where our public officials have said, "Well, we'll put this on the south side because they're tough people and they can deal with it." And saying disparaging things like that, I don't think it's right. The people who live there deserve beautiful things too. And they deserve to have a community that is beautiful and welcoming. And yeah, so it's definitely more meaningful for me, I think, coming from that
yeah.
kind of neighborhood. And I mean, I'm lucky that I live where I get to have horses and things like that. It's a little more rural that way, but I still it's the south side, and that's kind of my home, and I want to beautify spaces like that, and spaces where people are struggling, where they can see beauty, like the Community Crisis Center. That's been one of my favorite
It's
projects
got to
as
be one of
well.
your favorite ones of
Yeah,
all time. Yeah.
yeah,
So talk a little bit about that one.
that one is, and that's a place that people can go when they are
It's the
they're
crisis center. Like
yeah,
you are
it's a crisis
at your
center.
wits end. Like
When someone is
yep.
in crisis, yeah, people go there. They can stay there for a short amount of time when they're in crisis. They have a lot of like AA meetings and group meetings there as well. Um, they give people resources, try to help them. When someone's in crisis, oftentimes the police will bring them there
Yeah,
to
so it's
rather
right
than
by Billings
taking them
Clinic too,
to
and you
jail.
can drive by there any day, and it's
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
hurting people are
Yes,
in the
people
grass
at
out
their
front.
absolute lowest for sure. And they've put a lot of effort into making that a nice space as well. They were remodeling and trying to make a nice waiting room with some comfortable chairs and things like that. And they asked me to paint a mural. So I gave them a spectacular deal on painting the whole room. And I painted all the way around, pretty much 3 different walls. And again, the uplifting colors and a lot of plants and the sunbursts and the rims. And when I finished with that and I went back to paint the 13th Street underpass, I had so many people walk through the 13th Street underpass who said, I saw your crisis center mural the other day and thank you. And they love it. And so to change the waiting room feel to somewhere that you can go that feels comfortable and uplifting and give them something beautiful to look out while they're at their absolute lowest moments in life is really meaningful for sure. You know, just like the YWCA and the 6th Street Underpass and the Mental Health Center, these are my favorite projects for sure.
Yeah.
I think they make the biggest impact.
Well, and so this is, I wanted to kind of go on my soapbox for just a couple of
Yeah.
seconds, but it's why I believe so fundamentally in art. And I don't just mean, art is in painting, I mean art is in poetry and art is in music.
Right.
Because art carries our sacred symbols and our sacred stories. And I even think of like some of the things that you paint, like what a buffalo represents.
Yeah.
It's sacred to Native Americans.
Yeah.
It's the animal that lowers its head and walks through the storm
I
to
think
the other side.
the Native Americans, I think, love my work more than any other
That
population.
has been really well received. Yeah.
Yeah, so well received. They've been so kind and like grateful for that to see themselves like represented because they don't see they don't find that connection in a lot of the other themes that tend to be portrayed in art, all the human themes. They connect with nature because that's
Yeah.
their history, and it's their culture and it's what's sacred to them. And so, of course, having the things like the bison and the eagles, they just love those. And so it's really fun to implement those and to give them something to be proud
Yeah.
of as well in their home.
But you also think about what else, a bison
Yeah.
carries, right?
Yeah.
It's an animal that we
Yeah.
nearly shot to extinction. The pioneers and pilgrims nearly wiped out all of them.
Yeah, they're a symbol of resilience and of the American West, and they're a generous animal.
And there are symbols,
Yeah.
there's the symbols of Montana and they carry
Yeah.
our story inside of them. And so, and there's a couple of questions that I've just really dedicated myself to trying to figure out. One is what initiates internal transformation, for individuals. And to me, it's hope and it's meaning and identity. And art absolutely carries all of those things. And our artists, they tell our stories and our artists carry our stories and our
Yeah.
narrative. And cultures only function when they have a collective narrative, when we know who we are as a people. And there's so many examples and so much research about that. But to me, it's this question. And gosh, I was talking to Bob Wilmuth about this at one point. He's the president over at Rocky, and he said that Billings has an identity crisis. Like we don't know who we are. And I so fundamentally agree with that. And to me, it's like, well, we have to look to who we are in our symbols and our stories. And it's our artists who carry that forward and to carry that kind of sacred burden. And so that's what art is to me. It's the voice of identity and the voice of meaning. And so artists they're the ones who help us figure that identity crisis out. And so that's one component. And that has a lot to do with personal transformation. Like, who are we as a people? Who am I as an individual? What am I doing with my life? What can I do that matters? But also, art is so interesting too, because it brings people together. It's this incredibly unifying force. And, we've even got this, the concert with Wes Urbaniak coming up on Friday. You should definitely come. It's at 5 o'clock at the 406 Events Lawn. But, like, people are going to come. People who go to church are going to come. People who work at banks are going to come. People who, people from everywhere are going to come, and they're going to listen, and they're going to celebrate to, a true artist. I mean, Wes is such a great artist. And so I even think about our projects, and it's one of the reasons that I've worked so hard to support the arts is because we need to find our identity and we need to figure out who we are. And we also need to work together. When I think about the mental health crisis in Billings, one of the major contributing factors is that we're really siloed. We work together very poorly. And this is like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Yeah.
And so this is our nonprofit world. This is our churches.
Right.
And so, I'll give you an example of that. Like the Suicide Prevention Conference this year is scheduled on a date that 3 other conferences, including TED Talks, are. We just don't, like, we can't get a unified voice. And so these art projects that we've worked on, I think about the one at Senior High where, it was, so we did another art project in the life skills room at senior high. And so the number of organizations that came together to make that happen, right? It's senior high. So SD2 got really involved in it. Josh Beeman got really involved in it. Dimitri Solaris and his organization of Limitless Kids built that life skills room. And he's a 17-year-old kid who raised $125,000 to build this room for kids with special needs.
That's awesome.
And the Suicide Prevention Coalition and Pay Love Forward and Riverstone and and you and all of us came together in this celebration of like how do we make that space a little bit more
Yeah.
beautiful. And then even some of the paintings that we're doing now, or the murals that we're doing now, the one at Family Promise, and so we just had this a volunteering event. And to me, it was such a cool moment in time. So Sunshine is out
Yeah,
there.
that was amazing. All of the hot dogs handed out
Yep.
and all of the excitement from the homeless people that were
100%.
walking by and to find out that they got a meal.
Totally. Yeah. So we
See
scheduled
their
this event.
faces light up.
And Sunshine is painting that mural over there, and she needed some help. Like like I set up a volunteer day, and so some of the volunteers that came to participate were Tumbleweed, the YWCA, Riverstone, a whole bunch of people that I called. You came. Family Promise was involved, and then we fed hot dogs to all of the unhoused people that live there, and we did what Sunshine said was 4 days of work in like 2 hours for that mural. It's a 988 mural. We just loved people. Like we just went there, including, Evan. We celebrated Evan's birthday as well.
Yeah, that was on. Yeah, you invited me to this little gathering, I guess, and I had a kind of a day planned with Evan because it was Evan's birthday and my brother, and he's been kind of having a rough time lately. So we wanted to make his birthday pretty special, and so I thought I better spend the whole day with him. So I told you I probably wasn't able to make it, and you're like, oh, well, we'll bring him, and then you said, I'll get a cake. And so you got this massive birthday cake.
That's a big one.
It
Totally.
was huge. It was like the size of a table. And Evan got to come and spend some of his birthday with all these people and have some birthday cake and
A police officer came to celebrate his
Yeah,
birthday.
yeah.
Like us and like 30 homeless people saying happy birthday to Evan.
Yeah, super cool, super special.
And so to me, that just like it exemplifies what it is that we've been doing. The projects that we're working on together is that art is this unifying force. Is it gives us something to celebrate. I mean, that was the starting place, and actually one of the starting places. And this is sort of an internal ethos to Pay Love Forward. There's a passage in scripture that the stone that has been discarded has become the cornerstone. And to me, it's an invitation. It's sort of a how-to manual of how to affect change, which is to go to those places that have been discarded and the people that have been forgotten about and the people that are hurting.
Yeah.
And to make that a cornerstone. And so even that specific event, I built the whole thing around getting the kids from Tumbleweed to come
Yeah.
take part in that public art process. And those are kids that have been discarded and forgotten about. And so that was like the central idea, as well as that, we needed, like Sunshine needed to get some paint on that giant wall that but like, and then you build from there. And with
Yeah.
that inversion, when it's the 6th Street underpass, that's your canvas, then it's so interesting what happens because people catch that vision and they get excited about it. And all of a sudden you're celebrating a birthday party. And like, like the cake was maybe $50. And then I spent like $50 on hot dogs, but that's literally, and then we just showed up and like grilled for people and painted something beautiful. And so, I just like, as an invitation to people who want to go serve and who people want to go get involved in something. Like it just doesn't take it doesn't take so much. You don't have to have a giant building or a 501c3. Like, sometimes like it starts with art and artists and our imagination and people who want to find a creative voice and want to go to places that people are suffering because art gives meaning. Like it just gives people meaning and hope. And I mean, I'm an artist too. I write poetry and you paint.
Yeah.
And it's like, gosh, where would you be or where would I be without, having some outlet for
creativity. Yeah.
For the hardship that I've been through and
expression. Yeah. And it's spectacular that you had the event in one of the most kind of poverty-stricken areas in town with a lot of people in despair. So it made it all the more valuable. Gave them something.
Yeah, we're gonna go paint in their kitchen, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
their
maybe in their bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Alyssa, anything else that we should dive into? Anything else that we should talk about?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
Well, all right. One last thing. Let's kind of give a sounding board to you. There's been a lot of changes in, I think, the public sphere, especially with public art and our city council members. There's a new public art policy, I think.
Yeah.
And then there is this stuff where the city commissioners are defunding the YAM in order to fund our police force. And I know you have some thoughts about that. Yeah, tell me about how do you feel about public art, where it's at right now in our community?
Well, what's incredible about the public art we've been seeing is that a lot of it is just funded by the people.
It's really grassroots.
Yes, which is incredible because then it keeps it what the community truly wants. A lot of times, the problem with public funding is that it doesn't reflect the desires of the community. It becomes political in nature. Oftentimes, it only reflects the desires of the individuals that are hand selecting that art. And I think it's very important that the members of the community that they have a voice and that they get to choose what art will be in their community because it's their home. You know, you should be able to choose what your home looks like and what goes up in your home. And I think a lot of times taxpayers don't feel like their voice is heard or that they have a say in what the officials do. And that's what's been so amazing about my work is that it has truly been funded by the people. Individuals have given of themselves, you know, even if they don't have anything, like they have a tobacco blessing or whatever, they give of themselves to make sure that that work is supported in a way. And that's been pretty amazing. And that keeps it to be what the community wants to see. And I do love that. But I also love to see more public art. And I think it's a great way to beautify the community. I love rather than like adding new structures, I love beautifying existing ugly structures. I think that's the most valuable for sure. But I love the idea. I have a piece on a traffic signal box downtown, and I loved seeing those go up because they're these ugly square metal boxes, and now they're like works of art all over. And so stuff like that is really incredible. I think it's a great way to beautify the community and add value to it. But again, you know, it's tough. It's tough because I do want to see more art and I want to see artists be supported, but I also want the art to be what the community desires.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's well said as a guiding principle is how do we get our community to invest, embrace, and and drive this, it's a movement for our city.
Right.
And it's an outpouring of love and hope, and it needs to continue. And I absolutely plan on being part of that solution. All right. So final question. What's next for you as a muralist, as an artist? Do you have any big plans, any big projects that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I just finished up a piece for Miles City, so they'll come and pick it up and take it there and install it on a building there. So I just finished that one. I have some other projects that I'm working on. Another mural that will be going in a hotel in West Yellowstone, so I get to go there to do a piece. And I have some other kind of custom works and some works for myself that I need to catch up on. And some shows coming up this year, one in Anaconda and a little, it's the holiday food and gift show here in Billings. So that'll be kind of fun. I haven't done that before, but it'll be a fun new crowd, and I'll try to have some smaller items available for people there to spread art around the community.
That's so fun. Yeah, you always stay so busy every time I talk to you. All right, so what's that big, it's like on an overpass or something like that we had talked about potentially.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, right next to the 6th Street underpass, there's a
huge wall.
Big wall. It's the ramp that goes down onto Montana Avenue.
Yeah.
And you see it as you're driving north through the underpass. And there's like a little access road that you can turn on that leads to Montana Avenue, and it goes right alongside this big, ugly, giant gray wall
Yep.
that's often covered in graffiti, and then they try to cover it up, and then it's all these mismatched shades of gray painted on it. And so ideally in the future I would love to paint that and to make the whole 6th Street underpass one big giant public art installation.
So cool. I love that vision.
Huge project,
Yeah, I remember.
but
Yeah, and
it'd
we're
be a
gonna
ton
need
of
some help
fun.
from anybody who's listening to this. Like I think we were talking about like $10,000. I'm sure it's more than that
Yeah.
we need to raise. But hey, I'm on that team, so we'll figure it out, and we're gonna keep public art alive. And
Yeah.
I would finalize this with just thank you so much for all your endless service and your self-sacrifice, and I think it not only restored your faith in humanity, but it
Yeah.
restored faith in humanity for a lot of us.
For sure.
That you can go to those places and bring beauty, and beauty can come out of that.
Yeah, and thank you to people like you who are willing to give, as of monetary donations and your time and organizing and finding these spaces and thinking of projects and just supporting them. I mean, that's so important because I can't do it alone, and
Totally.
neither can any of these other artists. We need help. We need people to come up with ideas and locations and all of that.
I got lots of ideas, so
Perfect.
lots more to come. Thanks so much, Elsa.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Pay Love Forward podcast. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't let it stop there. Pay Love Forward is more than a podcast. It's a movement, a community, and a way of being. We believe that everyone is trying to answer the questions, who am I? Why am I here? And what can I do with my life that matters? Pay Love Forward is built to help others on their journey and to provide community where we can answer those fundamental questions together. So here's our invitation. Find a mentor, find a mentee, and come to one of our community gatherings. We'd love to see you there. Check out our Facebook group and visit www.payloveforward.net to get connected. Let's build something beautiful together.